So, yeah, again, thank you all for having me. My name is Armon Perry. I'm a professor here in the School of Social Work. I've been at UofL for the last 13 years. It's been, and from the very outset, I've considered myself to be a community engaged scholar. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about some of the benefits, talk about some of the opportunity costs so that people can be in a better position to make an informed decision about whether or not this is the track or the route they want to take for their careers. In doing that, we want to define community engaged scholarship. As I mentioned, I'm going to share a little bit of my experience, discuss some of the rewards, benefits, opportunity costs, and then try to leave people with some practical and tangible tips and recommendations for folks who may be interested in this sort of work. First, in terms of defining community engagement, it has been defined as the application of institutional resources to address and solve challenges facing communities through collaboration with those communities. And so I think the operative word there is collaboration, the partnerships, the mutual benefits, the symbiotic nature of community engagement. I think has always been something that has been attractive to me. I'm a social worker by trade, and so working with people as opposed to working on or working for people is something that resonates with me and my personal and professional values. And so community engagement is fairly consistent with those. We also know that outreach has been traditionally associated with the dissemination of information to public audiences. And so there, I think it's important that we take a community engaged lens there because we have a couple of responsibilities at a university. One is the creation of knowledge, and then the other is the dissemination of knowledge. But all too often, that knowledge stays within the walls of the university or within the walls of other universities. So, for those of us who take a community engaged lens or approach, it becomes important for us to take our information beyond the walls of the university and into the community. And as I've already alluded to, community engaged scholarship involves faculty engaging in mutually beneficial partnerships, right? In mutually beneficial partnerships, I'll underscore that with the community in order to ensure that their results derive from uh, solid data collection, rigorous research, but also research that can inform their teaching, discovery, as well as application and engagement, as well as the edification and improvement in terms of capacity building for the communities that they're working with and on behalf of. So just a little bit about some of my experience with community engagement. You'll see a couple of projects here. First is the promoting paternal participation in Healthy Start Services. I'm really proud of this project because the funding for it actually came from the U of L Office of Community Engagement. And with this project, what we were able to do was some really important needs assessment work with the local Healthy Start program. Healthy Start is a maternal and child health program that works with moms who are identified as having an increased risk for infant mortality. They were interested in improving or increasing the amount of engagement they had with fathers, and fatherhood is my research area, so I was able to partner with them. Out of that partnership came their Daddy Boot Camp program that still exists today. And so we were able to build that, and it has been serving families here in Louisville for the last 6 years. For Your Child was a federally funded parent education and case management intervention for non-resident dads that I ran for the last 5 years. We just wrapped that project up back in December of 2020. We were able to serve 1,300 dads over the course of the project, and we ran that project here in Louisville as well as 3 other counties across the state. From that project, we learned that it's tough to do follower involvement without engaging co-parents, and so our most recently completed project was a co-parenting project where we taught custodial mothers some of the same things that we taught the non-resident dads in our fatherhood project, so as to try to create some additional receptivity to the idea of co-parenting, improving those relationships so that dads could be in a much better position to negotiate access to their children so that they could then apply what they were learning in our fatherhood program. And again, all of these projects were uh, community engaged from the very beginning. Large numbers of families and fathers and families across the Commonwealth of Kentucky being served by them, and in conjunction with those projects, many of those folks left the projects in a much better position in terms of being able to not only provide for their families but take more active roles in their children's lives. And those types of increases in engagement have been associated with any number of positive child outcomes, and folks who are involved in child development research know that pro-social parenting and authoritative parenting, all of the things that we were attempting to teach in our projects, again, connected to a large number of healthy outcomes for children and families. So really proud of that work. Some of the benefits and rewards, again, I've talked a little bit about some of the needs assessment work and the way in which it led to the Daddy Bootcamp program that still exists today. But we also do staff training. We do parent education, relationship education, also are involved in reducing barriers, because it's oftentimes the case that when we're involved in this type of work, it's not necessarily about what is it we can do for people, but it's about just simply removing barriers so they can do for themselves. Right? And so those are some of the benefits that the community has derived from our projects, but there are also benefits for the researchers and the staff involved. And obviously, as a professor, having the opportunity to collect data is important. That's the lifeblood of my work. The community provides a venue to sharpen my research and my presentation skills as well as training skills. Community engagement work also informs my teaching because it gives me real life examples to draw from in the classroom. And there's a perceived credibility that comes along with engaging the community in research and projects that are community engaged. And so there's some benefit there as well. Some of the opportunity costs, community engaged scholarship takes a lot of time. It's different than sort of just simply analyzing data from a secondary data collection or data set. You have to develop relationships, you have to cultivate those relationships, you have to manage those relationships, and all of those things can be time consuming. Some of the other opportunity costs, work-life balance. Again, you're giving up large amounts of your time, and that necessarily bleeds over into other aspects of your life, and that can be troublesome and problematic if you don't manage it well. Community engaged scholarship is not always recognized and rewarded by traditional academics, particularly in terms of where the funding may come from. And others may have different experiences, but it's been my experience that traditional academics, and even I've had experience even at here at the University of Louisville, where I faced questions about why I was seeking funding from various funding sources and why I was spending time engaged in community rather than doing things that would have otherwise been rewarded by sort of a traditional or more traditional track or route in terms of academic productivity. But there's a preoccupation, I think, with NIH and NSF funding, where there's funding opportunities in other places that can get you opportunities to get really, really good work done, but you may have to think outside the box in order to manifest those relationships and cultivate. So for those who are interested in this type of work, that's something that you need to be aware of on the front end, because it's likely that you'll face those things. So in terms of what folks may need in order to be a community engaged scholar, you necessarily have to be able to, again, establish, develop, manage, and cultivate relationships. Having grant writing skills is really important because, again, it's oftentimes the case that community-based organizations have really good ideas about what they want to do, but they don't necessarily always have staff, and they don't always have skills who can help with grant writing. So that may be one of the ways that you can partner with them by bringing those skills to the table. Again, for all the reasons that I mentioned, you have to have time management skills. You need patience because there'll be stops and starts and sometimes bumps in the road. And while you're managing and cultivating those relationships, it's important that the relationships move forward at a pace and at a speed that everyone is comfortable with. And that, again, sometimes requires patience. And I think the most important thing is you have to have a genuine concern for the community of interest. I think when you begin to engage folks in the community in conversation about what it is you want to do, you'll oftentimes come across people who have been exploited and mistreated by folks under the auspices of research. And so it's sometimes that we have to work through some of the baggage and scar tissue that the community is wrestling with from previous people who came into the community to collect data and extract resources, but didn't provide anything in exchange. So whether or not you're genuine and whether or not you're sincere in your interests and your intentions is something that you have to be mindful of, because my experience tells me that certainly the community will be. These are a couple of resources for people who have an interest in community engaged scholarship. There are journals dedicated to it. And obviously, the UofL Office of Community Engagement is a big resource. Um, the university provides a database where people can find funding opportunities that may be a fit for the types of community engaged projects that they're looking to establish. And then there's also a national consortium for a community engaged scholarship, and there's a website for it there. I know we're running short on time, so again, I want to thank you all for having me. If there's an opportunity for Q&A, I'd be glad to field any questions that you all may have.